With AT&T in-car Wi-Fi, elevate your adventure by transforming your vehicle into a reliable Wi-Fi hotspot. Connect up to 10 devices up to 50 feet away from your vehicle, making it ideal for camping and road trips. Don't miss out on the fun. Embark on your next adventure today. Visit att.com/in-car Wi-Fi to check if you're eligible for a free trial. Always pay careful attention to the road and don't drive distracted. Wi-Fi hotspot intended for passenger use only when vehicle is in operation. Compatible device and vehicle required.
The less your business spends, the more margin you keep. But today, everything costs more. So smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one proven platform, helping you reduce IT costs, maintenance costs, and manual errors. Over 37,000 companies have already made the move to NetSuite. Now through April 15th, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind flexible financing program. Head to netsuite.com/stereo right now. netsuite.com/stereo.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Happy Earthquake Day, everybody, and welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live right here on Giants.com and the Giants mobile app. That was just Lance working out in the gym here, guys, and that tends to be the result when, Lance starts, throwing his weight around, for lack of a better term.
Literally and figuratively speaking.
Earthquake start.
That's what happens. I have that impact.
And it sounds
My
like
footprint, and then some.
All jokes aside, based on what I've seen, there doesn't seem to be any reports of any major damage anywhere, which is great. Everybody's safe, which is great. Hope you guys enjoyed the little wiggle and jiggle that we had about an hour and a half ago in the tri-state area. So, fun Friday, folks. We've been having guests every day, and we were going to do a draft expert today. But Lance and I talked last night. We were texting, and it's like, you know what? We haven't had a show where we've actually talked and just had a discussion about the draft in a while. And we'll open up the phones. We'll take a bunch of your calls at 201-939-4513. So get on the line, give us a call, and we'll talk some draft and talk some Giants football. Of course, Big Blue Kickoff Live is brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So, Lance, we're sitting here. We are now just under 3 weeks from night one of the draft. It's coming fast and furious. Where do you stand right now with how you're thinking about the Giants and how they're going to approach this draft with their first couple selections?
Well, as far as the first-round pick is concerned, I mean, nothing has dramatically, John, changed for me. I still see, and I'd be surprised if there's not a run on quarterbacks to start the draft, which means that I think things should fall into place for the Giants with respect to them being in position to get an offensive weapon,
Define
a game
run.
changer. A run meaning the top three picks.
Do you think then there'll
Bears,
be a trade up for
Commanders,
the
and the
fourth
Patriots. I could see the Cardinals going after a wide receiver. I would not be surprised if they say to themselves, hey, Marvin Harrison Jr. is there. Let's take him. Let's give Kyler Murray somebody to work with. And remember, we've had this discussion time and time again. The team that would have to move up, let's say that the first three teams take a quarterback, that means that the team that's moving up must have loved at least a minimum 2 to 3 different quarterbacks, which I personally find hard to believe.
Or one of the two quarterbacks they loved hadn't been selected yet.
Dropping, it's possible. But, I mean, once again, you literally have to have an extreme open mind as a team, even if you feel as strongly, John, about two different quarterbacks, okay? And
Sure.
Normally you go into a draft, you have a separation between at least one guy and the rest of the pack. You really have to feel good about two to make a move, in my mind, to get to the number 4 spot and also give Arizona something to think about to move out of that spot and pass up on arguably what could go down as the number 1 elite wide receiver in this class.
Agree, but I do think there's a level of desperation for teams like
sure.
the Vikings and the Broncos and the Raiders especially, who have starters in place, but probably not starters where you're looking and saying, all right, these guys are going to lead us to the playoffs. Like, they just don't have that track record, right? So I have to think those teams, and we've ever seen the Vikings have been fairly open about this, where they're like, we're going to try to trade up with those 2 first-round picks. So if not the Cardinals, and I do think the Cardinals are more likely to stay put than the Chargers, I think Jim Harbaugh is really trying to redo that franchise, right?
Yeah.
And he wants to accumulate picks Remember, he's going to be very familiar with the college football players coming out. So you go back to when Jimmy Johnson became coach of the Cowboys. One of the reasons they were able to build that team so quickly and so well is the guys that Jimmy Johnson was telling Jerry Jones to draft were the guys that he was recruiting at Miami. So he really had a good feel for the college football
Well, he wasn't that
players.
far removed from the college game. Yeah.
Right. Same thing with Jim Harbaugh. So I think he's going to want as many swings of the bat as to draft as many of these college players that he's very familiar with to rebuild that roster, which we know got torn down a little bit. They had a lot of cap issues. That's an ongoing process. You want to have a lot of low-cost players on the roster. And we know Jim Harbaugh loves to build an offensive line. And it's such a deep offensive line draft where, yeah, Joel might be the first guy that comes off the board as an offensive tackle. But if you get the third or fourth offensive tackle, most people, and I'm one of them, think that player is going to be a really good starter. So they could slide down to that 11, 12, 13 range with those three teams we talked about. Still get a guy you can plug and play a tackle if you want, and then you'll get another 2 or 3 picks on top of that in order for you to continue to build that roster the way Jim Harbaugh wants. So I'm with you. I still think, just based on how Austin Ford has operated with Arizona, there's a chance they might move too. But I do think the Chargers would definitely try to move out of that spot, especially given the draft capital they would get in return from one of those teams that my guess is going to like whatever. At least one of those teams is going to like one of the quarterbacks that's left, and they would try to move up to get one of those players.
Well, and they also have Justin Herbert, so clearly they don't need to stay put and draft a quarterback or even bring in somebody for the sake of competition. So I'm sure Harbaugh is more than comfortable saying, okay, let's move down and grab some assets, as you mentioned.
Let's say it's the Vikings, right? And it's 11 and 23. What are the 2 deepest positions in the first round? You can get your wide receiver that they need because they lost Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and they get the offensive tackle to build Harbaugh's line. So they get a 2-for-1 there. And then, by the way, to move up 10 spots, you're probably getting their next year's 1, 2, or at least another high-value day 2 pick at some point. So I just think it's a real good opportunity for LA to kind of build their roster.
Well, I'm with you. And Minnesota does have 2 first-rounders, and they had recently acquired one, so they seem to be at least lining up their ducks in a row here to make a move. And they only have Sam Darnold. They had a revolving door last season. Kirk Cousins clearly signed with the Atlanta Falcons. The Raiders, they have Aiden O'Connell. They don't necessarily have a guy that they're feeling great about under the circumstances. Minshew, but I don't think Minshew's a long-term answer necessarily. I like Minshew. I think he
I'm surprised you didn't mention him. No one loves himself some Gardner Minshew like Lance Medow.
But I just think with Antonio Pierce taking over and their operation with a new GM, the goal is you always want to find your guy long-term that you could develop.
Totally agree.
So I'm with you. I think both of those teams are going to make a move, but at the same time, you can set your franchise back if you reach for a guy.
Oh, yeah.
Just because you need a quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the other thing that I'm keeping in the back of my mind, that if the first 3 picks are quarterbacks, how do the Vikings and Raiders feel about the players that are left over? Whether it's a Drake May or a J.J. McCarthy or a Jaden Daniels, whoever it may be. Because remember, all of these quarterbacks, and we talk about this year in and year out, it's different styles. What do you want to sign up for, John? Do you want the athlete, the guy that can dazzle like a Daniels? Do you want the pure pocket passer? Do you want somebody that has operated an NFL-style offense like J.J. McCarthy but may not have the flash? To each their own. You know, it depends on what the coach and what the front office thinks has the most upside. And when you look at the teams here, they're all across the board because Washington just got a new coaching staff and a new general manager. The Patriots, you know, they have some familiar voices, but everything's new there. Minnesota does not have newness, though. Kevin O'Connell's been in place, as well as their general manager. And the Raiders, Pierce was there last season, but their general manager is new. So you look around the board, it's hard to get a read, my point is, on all of these teams because I don't really know what the identities are of all of these squads, considering they can go in various different directions. And the guy that's now the general manager of the Raiders just worked with Justin Herbert because he was there when they were drafted. So that sends even more of a curveball into the mix. Do they think there's a player that's similar to Herbert? And do they want to try to duplicate that?
That would be Drake May, by the way, if you want to pick a guy.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. But who knows if May, once again, is still going to be on the board in that situation if they move up or they move down, whichever direction they want to go.
How do you stack the top 4 quarterbacks for you personally?
Well, I think Caleb Williams is in a league of his own. Personally, I think people are reading too much into this last season. I don't get that much worked up over what was a horrendous defense. The guy had to throw left and right.
Totally agree.
He had no chance whatsoever to set the tone because they were playing catch up. So I look at what 2022 provided for Caleb Williams more so than 2023. And I say if the Bears, and I'm not saying Chicago's having a debate right now, but I'm not leery on what 2023 presented. That doesn't scare me.
We always talk about
standpoint.
the situation around the quarterback being important. The
100%,
situation around
yeah.
Caleb Williams is not great this year. Neither was the situation around Drake May, for that matter.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt about it. And May comes from a North Carolina program, too, in Mac Brown, that has done a nice job in developing players, whether it's quarterbacks and so forth. I mean, you can't lose sight over that. Daniels has the intrigue because of the athleticism. Daniels, to me, is more of what a lot of teams have been seeking in recent drafts, which is, can we get the guy that could be involved a little bit in the run game? He's not just going to extend the pocket, he's going to extend the play. But do you risk injury with somebody like that? You have to at least ask yourself for that. But it's hard for me to dismiss the game-changing ability that he could bring to the table and what that could do for your offense. I'm not saying he's Lamar Jackson, but you can run an offense if you want that has the principles of what the Ravens have done with Lamar.
So he's your second guy?
I'd put him number 2
Okay.
because of that intrigue. Michael Penix Jr. scares me because of the injury baggage. It's not that I don't think he has upside. It's just how much do you want to roll the dice that you're going to get him and he's going to stay healthy? That, to me, is worrisome. We're not talking about John 1 injury. Yeah. We're talking about a lot of baggage. So from that standpoint, I'd put Daniels 2. I'd put J.J. McCarthy 3. I'd put Drake May 4.
Ooh.
That's how I would have the
Why
quarterbacks.
would you put McCarthy 3 over May?
I value the system he came from. I value who coached him. I do think he has the intangibles. It's just with J.J. McCarthy, I don't think you put him on your team and you say, wow me all alone. I think your environment needs to be clean. You need to have a solid offensive line. You're not going to maybe get a guy that's going to take you, and I hate to use the cliche, but I'll use it, above the X's and O's single-handedly. But I do think he has the intangibles that if you're going to be a team, for example, like Minnesota, and you make a move for J.J. McCarthy, I like McCarthy in Minnesota. And the reason why, I think they have the wide receivers. I think they have an offensive line that at least has some key pieces, and I think they have an improving defense. So Minnesota and J.J. McCarthy is a good marriage. Now, John, if you were to take another team that does not have its house in order, I would not like J.J. McCarthy going there. So you look at the Commanders, you look at the Patriots. I think the Patriots still have some question marks. I don't think their house is totally in order. That's why environment, which is something I preach and you preach, matters with J.J. McCarthy.
I agree.
Minnesota, I like the pick. New England, J.J. McCarthy, I would not be as ultra excited under those circumstances.
I'm with you. So I have it stacked: Williams, May, Daniels, and then McCarthy, with small little gaps between each group, to be honest with you. Like, I have like little tiers. Like, I have May and Daniels are probably the two closest guys in that group of 4, but then McCarthy's a tier down for me, and Williams is a tier up from those two middle guys. So you guys have heard me talk about these quarterbacks. Giants Huddle Podcast. So go download it, check it out. My interview with Nate Tice is up there right now. We do a lot on these quarterbacks. Steven Reese earlier in the week. So if you want more details on that, go check it out. What's your order on? Okay, so let's just finish the quarterback conversation very quickly. So do you think the Giants are in a position? If the guy is there that they love at 6, they can stick and pick. That's great. If one of those 4 guys don't make it to 6, do you think the Giants are in a situation where they could consider trading up for a quarterback?
Well, I think they could certainly consider trading up for a quarterback regardless.
Should?
Or whether they should? Okay, well, if you word it that way, once again, I think, John, it depends on who's on the board. Because if we're going to apply my logic to the Giants, if you put any quarterback with the Giants, do I think any quarterback will thrive? My answer is no. Because as much as the Giants have improved the roster, I don't think they're a finished product. I don't think you put a single play caller in there under center and think that if the offensive line doesn't make enough strides, that quarterback single-handedly, like J.J. McCarthy, could do his thing. There's a young wide receiver core that still has some question marks about durability. And remember, I've been preaching they need a playmaker. As it stands right now, John, they do not have a guy that if I'm playing the Giants on a random Sunday, I say to myself, as an opposing defensive coordinator, who do I fear that I need to roll my coverage over to that end?
I've been saying the same exact thing, Lance.
They have a bunch of nice players, but they don't have that worrisome player. And Barkley's not here anymore. So if you now...
And by the way, Waller, who knows what's going to happen with him, too?
Waller right now is a question mark because pending retirement, we have no idea. So that's more of a reason why there's a question mark. So if you're telling me you're going to move up to grab a quarterback, now your opportunity to grab that playmaker has dissipated.
And you're trading maybe additional other picks that takes more opportunities away from trying to get that playmaker.
Whether it be 2024 or maybe you give up assets in 2025, who knows what it would take, because it's going to take something and then some to move up. So you have to weigh that. What helps your team now? Is it the explosive playmaker, or is it the quarterback who you may move up to get, and also is no guarantee he's going to be on the field immediately too? Let's not forget about that. So when you look at it through that lens, my answer would be no. I don't think it's worth it to sacrifice the explosive playmaker. The only way it's worth it, John, is if you swap spots with the Bears and you get the number 1 overall pick. And the reason being is then I know you're getting the quarterback you want, where there's conviction in the room.
Well, my guess is that
debate.
You wouldn't be making this trade till draft night anyway.
Without a doubt. But what I'm saying is that I'd be willing to give up all the assets to go after the number 1 overall pick, because that means that there's no debate. The Giants, they're all on the same page, and they're not questioning, well, if A moves down to B, if C moves up.
Well, let's say, for example,
they're getting their guy.
They get the draft night.
Okay.
Williams is their number 1 quarterback in this theoretical world. We have no idea where the Giants have their quarterback stacked. He's gone. And let's say Washington picks Jaden Daniels second, right? But he's the 4th quarterback on the Giants board in our theoretical world. They get to 3. Their number 2 quarterback, which they don't have that far behind, their number 1 guy in Williams is sitting there at 3, and the Patriots are willing to move. You're going to get your second favorite quarterback in the draft who you think has legitimate, like, top 8 star potential. Would you then pull the trigger?
Well, once again, it depends on who the quarterback is.
Whoever,
in my mind. Meaning, you're going to take out of the equation whether or not you feel if you could slide that quarterback in, that quarterback. It's just a long-term plan.
For you,
is what you're saying.
For you, let's say your second favorite quarterback is Jaden Daniels, right? Let's say it's Jaden Daniels sitting there for you.
If Daniels is there, given his athleticism, and I said what he brings to the table is unique, I would absolutely consider that.
Okay, good. Okay,
that I would consider.
And so we're on the same page then. If you're going to trade up, it has to be for a guy that you think is special.
Without a doubt. It has to be, because once again, I think the Giants are an unfinished house on offense. So there's pieces there, but we don't know yet what that's going to present. So I'd be leery of putting any quarterback out there. Now, you could argue you could still move up. Daniel Jones is your guy for this coming season, and then you make the transition the following year. But once again, how does the unit around whoever's quarterback this year play out? I don't know that yet, and I would not be willing to roll that many dice to get a quarterback unless I feel a lot secure or better about the offensive line, the pieces, and so forth.
So I feel like we're also both on the same page then, that if you stick and pick at 6, you have to look at wide receiver given the strength of this class, correct?
Without a doubt, because once again, it's not just a wide receiver, it's a weapon, John. That's how I talk about some of these players, just like I talked about Barkley. You don't just classify them with one position. You classify them as a multifaceted player because of the various different areas that they can chip in on offense, whether it be on the ground or as a receiver. For example, Malik Neighbors was utilized out of the backfield. So he could be an added dimension to your run game in addition to what he could do if you get him out in open space.
Yeah, I'm with you. How do you have those top 3 wide receivers? Or maybe it's not a top 3 for you. Maybe it's a top 2. How do you have them stacked?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's almost a flip of the coin with Neighbors and Odunze. I feel great about both of them.
You have Harrison as your 1?
Yes, Harrison is 1.
Got it.
So that's why I'm not, I guess, considering him, because as it stands where the Giants select, I'd be floored if he's still on the board.
Tony Pauline and I did a mock draft the other day.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a realistic scenario. Top 3 picks are all quarterbacks. Cardinals get out, right? Vikings trade up. They selected, I think it was either McCarthy or May. It was the 4th quarterback.
Okay.
I think it was May. And then the Chargers take Joe Alt. That's the scenario where Harrison's there. I don't think that's inconceivable.
Yeah, I mean,
is it likely? No. Is there like a 10% chance? Maybe. But I do think there's a scenario where that could happen.
Well, if that does happen, then it's Harrison without any hesitation. I would the more and more I think about it, you could argue Odunze gives the Giants something that maybe they don't have currently.
I think he's a better fit with the wide receiver group. I agree with you.
Neighbors, I love, once again, the dual threat that he offers, but, I'm high on Wan'Dale Robinson, and I think another season under his belt, Robinson could give you a little bit of what Neighbors does out of the backfield, out in open space. So from that standpoint, and considering Robinson is still young, I'd lean more towards Odunze as the roster is currently set up.
Do you prefer Neighbors in the slot? Because if you prefer Neighbors in the slot, then I get where you're coming from, because that's Robinson's spot, right? You're not going to move Robinson's outside.
And I would lean more towards Neighbors in the slot. I wouldn't be against playing him on the outside, but I think given his skill set, I think you could probably get more out of him in the slot.
Okay. Would you give consideration at this point to any other player at any other position at 6, other than those 3 guys we just talked about?
Well, if Waller retires, it's hard for me to sell Brock Bowers.
I can't pick Bowers over one of those 3 wide receivers.
I can't.
If you maybe trade down to 10 or something, and like the 3 wide receivers are gone and Bowers is sitting there, sure. But I can't pick Bowers over one of those 3 wide receivers. I can't do it.
Well, because if you're going to draft a tight end at 6, I think they have to be a complete player from a blocking and a receiving standpoint. You could tell me all you want. Well, you're going to line him up as a receiver on every single play, but there's going to be plays where he still needs to block, regardless, because then he's going to become a predictable player. So I would lean away towards Bowers, and I think Bellinger is still a promising player. We need him to have more of a complete set of the blocking aspect and the receiving aspect. But I thought as a rookie, Bellinger did a really nice job. So I'm not looking at the roster that it's bare if Waller winds up retiring. And they brought in blockers through free agency. So even if you don't think Bellinger is once again a brick wall, then between him and the free agents, you can have an operational group of tight ends. Then the offensive line, John, I think I made this clear. Joe Alt's a solid player, but if you're going to move him to the right side, you now add more question marks to the player.
And I think they did enough in free agency to at least give you a backstop there.
Correct. I think Illuminor gives you the versatility where he can play tackle and guard. Even if Neal stays at right tackle and Illuminor is your right guard, if Neal struggles, you could kick him out to right tackle. And he's not an old man. He's proven that he could be a solid option based on what he did with the Raiders. So I think you protect yourself if Neal struggles with the presence of Illuminor. But to draft a player who you know you're not going to put on the left side, and you know you're not going to move Andrew Thomas to the right, because now you give yourself more question marks.
Of course, yeah.
Okay?
No, yeah.
So
you are moving Andrew Thomas.
So what is the purpose to just say, oh, well, you got another promising young player? Yeah. And that promising young player has yet to play on the right side. How do you know the footwork's going to pan out? How do you know he's going to be seamless from the left side to the right side?
I agree.
I would be concerned about that. And that goes back to, it's the same question marks and debate you have when you draft a quarterback. You don't draft a quarterback on an island and say, I love the player. You draft a quarterback to see how he fits with your team. When you draft Joe Alt, if you're not putting Joe Alt on the left side, how does he fit in on the right side? And if there is an ounce of concern, then, John, you don't make the pick. And that's how I feel.
I'm with you. All right. We've gone through team needs a million times before, so I'm not going to get into day 2 and day 3 because we've been through that. Interior defensive line, corner, running back, safety, wide receiver if you don't go there at pick 6 overall, obviously. Guard maybe. So those are the type of spots you're looking at later in the draft. If you want to call in and talk about that, you can at 201-939-4513. I mentioned it earlier. Go subscribe to the Giants Medow podcast. We've had some great episodes go up this week. Steven Ruiz, Ryan Wilson, Nate Tice is the one that's up there right now. You're going to have Matt Miller going on a little bit later on today. Just a lot of great talk about this draft class and getting ready. And next week we have a lot of other good stuff going on. Matt Waldman, who does his scouting RSP, he usually joins us on Big Blue Kickoff every year. He's on the huddle this year, trying to get Kurt Warner going early next week. Maybe Thomas Dimitroff might join us, the former GM of the Falcons. So a lot of really good guests coming your way as we continue to dissect this draft class right here on the Giants Podcast Network. Go subscribe, Giants.com/podcast, Giants mobile app, or just search on your favorite podcast platform for the Giants Huddle Podcast or Draft Season, our draft podcast with Tony, Pauline, and I. Every week we go through things. This week we had our first, our penultimate mock draft of the cycle. So make sure you go check that out as well, Draft Season. All right, let's get to the calls, 201-939-4513, and lead off with Marty and Manahawkin. What's up, Marty?
Hey, John. Hey, Lance. How's it going?
What's up?
What's happening?
I'm looking at a scenario where is if the three receivers are gone that the Giants are looking at, you'll probably have. Well, unless somebody's not really that high on the quarterbacks, I mean that could be a possibility too.
Marty, I would say that is a look. I'm happy to answer your question about the scenario, but when I say that's a less than 2% chance, I mean that's a less than 2% chance.
Well, I mean, I hope so for that respect. But if something crazy was to happen, would having to take Brock Bowers would that be a decent trade-off?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be my backup plan. I would then look to get out because think of it this way, Marty. If 3 wide receivers are gone, that means only 2 quarterbacks are off the board, which means 2 quarterbacks that people consider top tier, based on reports, are still there, and another team's going to want to trade up to get them. So then you get out of that 6th spot, you trade with whoever it is, the Vikings or the Broncos or the Raiders, every team wants to come up. You trade with them, you get out, you get a slew of picks, and then you go pick whatever player you think is best in that range, whether it's a tackle. Because at that point, you could pick a guy that plays right tackle, right? Like a Talese Fuanga. You could pick a guy that plays right tackle like a J.C. Latham, so you're not worried about the switch aspect. Yeah. Maybe Brock Bowers is sitting there. Maybe like Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, the 4th wide receiver at that spot. So it gives you other options. So if those 3 wide receivers are gone, it means only 2 quarterbacks have been taken. Get the hell out of there and get some good assets and you trade down.
Also, the quarterback that perhaps the Giants have some interest in could still be there, too. Let's not rule that out.
Great point.
And they don't have to move, and they'll just use it on a signal caller. That's possible. I mean, in your extreme hypothetical, Marty, you could argue if the Giants do like this quarterback class, that could be good news for them to still have their quarterback at their disposal.
You made a great point. That should have been my first answer. Yeah, if that quarterback is sitting there that you think is special, that you think can put you in the category of the Justin Herberts and Lamar Jacksons and Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, you pick that player, and then you move on from there.
Exactly. Okay, fellas, that's about it. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, Marty.
All right, sounds
good.
You
as well. 201-939-4513. You know what? It's unlikely, but I like talking about those scenarios because it's the draft, and crazy things happen all the time. So I think it's good to at least investigate that sort of thing.
Well, just real quickly, John, if we were to go down the hypothetical road that the last caller went, Washington traded away Sam Howell, okay? So as it stands right now, I mean, they've got...
No, they're picking a quarterback.
That's why I'm just going through it. I understand what Marty was saying, but in a world where Washington has the number 2 overall pick and Caleb Williams is off the board, something tells me they like one of the 3 or 4 other guys
ostensibly,
that are still available.
It would be quarterback, receiver, and that's what his scenario would look like.
Well, but then you go to New England. I was going to go. Okay, New England, they traded Mac Jones to Jacksonville. Not that they had stability when Mac Jones was on the roster to begin with.
They have Jacoby Brissett,
but he's brought in to mentor, in my mind, the guy that eventually is going to come in. So both teams, even though they haven't declared they're going to draft a quarterback, if you look at the moves that were made leading up to the draft, they're pretty much spelling out that they're going to take a signal caller. So
I'm with you.
I'd be very surprised if they go, well, we're going to bring in the playmaker. Yeah, but do you need the guy to throw the ball to the playmaker? Unless they're going to make a move for a Ryan Tannehill or somebody, and they've already spoken. But once again, when you have a new coach and a new general manager, because the turnover rate is so high, John, in the NFL, most of them are of the philosophy, I can't wait to find my quarterback.
And by the way, an impatient owner that just lived 20 years with an awesome quarterback and has now learned what life is like without that awesome quarterback. And Robert Kraft is, I believe, over 80 years old. Trust me, he doesn't want to wait for this.
Well, and Washington just got new ownership, and they're excited. They're not on the older side, but that group certainly wants to get stability, right? I mean, they already lived Sam Howell, and I'm not saying it's on Sam Howell. He had no protection last season. He was sacked more so than any other quarterback. But I digress and get back to the point at hand here. The philosophy for most coaches and general managers is, if I have 2 to 3 years to prove I deserve to keep my job, and you spend the first 2 years working with various quarterbacks, in all likelihood, you're not getting beyond the third year. So if you're this high in the draft, I think most executives and coaches are of the philosophy you take the quarterback because the goal is you don't want to be this high anymore. The goal is you want to win football games.
And you don't want to have to trade a bajillion assets to get back up there to draft your guy.
That's more of a reason why I'd be very surprised if Washington, New England don't go quarterback.
Which is why we talk about the Giants in that regard too, right? You're sitting there at 6. You don't want to pick at 6 again. That's why it has to be an option just because it's the most important position.
Sure. A little bit different, though, because other teams are in front of you.
Correct.
For example, if the Giants
had
the third
Daniel
overall
Jones
pick.
under contract in-house too, which is different too.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm with you. All right, let's go to Len in Columbia, Maryland. Len, what's going on?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Hi, Len.
Hey, I just want you guys to know that I'm in the Bob Kraft area when it comes to age, and I don't want to wait too long either.
All of you are still younger than Dottino, so it's okay.
Yeah, I want to see the playoffs and another Super Bowl. I prefer sooner than later.
So I imagine you do not want to select the quarterback then, Len, would be my guess.
No, that's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. You know, I'm going to enjoy this off season to the maximum. You know, getting ready for this draft, it's exciting. And, you know, training camp. Because the best thing I can say about this roster at this point, we got a lot of work to do, guys. Jeez, I mean, there's just holes all over this roster. But let's talk positively. Let's talk positive. We got the 6th pick. Let's get a weapon like Lance referred to. We can't go with that 15, 16 points a game. We're not going to win many games.
Agreed.
But it just looks like, you know, right now it looks like a double-digit loss season again. So, you know, get the weapon. If the wide receiver is there, I think Harrison is going to go to the Cardinals. I think he's going 4. I think we had it right way back in January. 3 quarterbacks. Harrison is 4. Maybe the wild card is really what happens at the Chargers, but that's not going to affect us because there's going to be a wide receiver there for us.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Either Neighbors or Odunze. I really can't make up their mind. I like Odunze because he's a boundary guy. He can play on the outside. I think Wandale's a slot guy. But I wouldn't be upset if it was Neighbors. I wouldn't be upset if it was Neighbors. Lance, I want to talk a little bit about the offensive line. And I mentioned your name because you've been in it a couple of times over the last 2 weeks with a really good caller, Hugo, who was not terribly excited about the offensive line and the direction of which it's gone. I think they've done a pretty good job with the offensive line. I like what they've done right up to bringing in this new assistant offensive line coach. I mean, the guy knows the center position for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is he comes from Iowa, and they know everything coming out of Iowa. In the long run, they may not be really good football players, but, man, they indeed know the technique. And I think he can help Schmitz. I think he's there for one reason, make John Michael Schmitz a better football player. So I like what we've done. You know, we need Neal to get better. We need Schmitz to get better. But the backups are just, you know, miles ahead of where we were last year. Veteran guys, they know their role. They can play in the NFL. We may not want them to play a position for the whole season, but these are, you know, guys who we can get in there for a couple of games if somebody gets hurt and we're not really damaged too badly. So I think we've done okay with that offensive line. And here's where I may differ with Lance, with you. I think we've done well enough on the offensive line that players like Uzudu and McKeithen are getting pushed off this roster.
Well, who's pushing them out, just out of curiosity?
Schlotman.
All right, Schlotman, okay.
Yeah.
Who's a center/guard?
Stinney. And the tackle that they just signed, who's also from Iowa, right? Nelson? Was it Nelson?
Yeah, Matt Nelson, former Lion.
Yeah, from the Lions. I think he's an Iowa guy too. So that gives you 8 right there. So maybe Uzudu is right there at 9. Maybe he gets that spot because he's, you know, supposedly has the versatility. I think when we drafted him, we weren't sure what position he was going to play, and we still don't know what position he's going to play. and he hasn't grabbed the bull by the horns. I think he's sliding off the roster.
Well, Len, I don't think we know what Carmen Brasillo thinks of all these guys. And I think that's a big part of this, right? We don't know what he thinks of McKeithen. Okay. We don't know what he thinks of Ezeudu. So I did a podcast hit for a podcast last night. They asked me, so what is Carmen Brasillo, what does he think of this offensive line? What kind of offensive lineman does he like? And my answer was this: I have no idea. I haven't talked to Carmen Brasillo yet. I mean, you can go by what he had in Vegas and stuff like that. So I think until we know what he thinks about these guys, I think it's honestly tough to say. And I would not assume that Nelson is an automatic guy that's going to be on the roster either, by the way.
Okay. No, and I'm with you there. Right. Yeah, I mean, there are more veterans on the roster, Len. I think that's what you're getting at. But veterans also, some of these guys have been journeymen who have moved from teams. I mean, Schlottman and Stinney have been on several teams during the course of their careers.
And they're not starters. But they're better backups, I think, that we have had in the past. And I know you guys know I like guys that fall into that 4 or 8 range. These are guys who belong in the league.
Oh no, Len, I'm with you.
Again, they may not be starters.
Well, I think if you made me and said, Schmeelk, put your 9 together right now, who's starting the season on the roster, I would say Thomas, Neal, Schmitz, Runyon, Illuminor, right? So let's take those 5 when we put them beside. That's the 5. Then you have to have a guy that's capable of playing backup center. And right now, there's no one else on the roster besides Schlottman that can play backup center. So
there you go.
I'm going to slide Schlottman in there as the backup center. I think Aaron Stinney started enough games at guard where he could be a guard. I think then you have Josh Ezeudu, who I think they showed last year they trusted to be a multi-positional backup, which I think helps his case as a guy that can be guard or tackle. So that's 8. And then you have your 9th guy. Is that going to be McKeithen? Is that going to be Nelson, to your point? Is that going to be someone that they draft on day 2 or day 3 of this draft? That's a question. But I feel at least right now, I feel pretty good about that first 8 that we talked about, assuming they, of course, get through the offseason.
Yeah. I think we've improved on the offensive line. And that was a major thing, obviously. So I mean, that's why. And we got this. Staying positive. We got the 6th pick in the draft. That's an important spot. You got to believe the closer you draft to number 1, the less riskier it is. If your pick is 142. There's a little more risk involved at 142 than there is at 6. If we don't believe that, we might as well just tear up the draft and not think of another way to get players on teams. But that's valuable. I mean, that's a big. We should have there's a star there, the kind of guy that Lance is talking about, and we need more stars. I mean, as Lance suggested, I mean, we got some guys. But they're not stars. You win with stars. We got to get somebody at that 6th position. I don't know where we go at is this 47? I guess 47 is our 2nd pick.
Yeah.
I don't know where running back. I'm worried about the defensive line.
Yeah, Len, I would not go running back in the 2nd round. I think this is a deep enough class where to me, that would be more of a 3rd or 4th round priority.
Okay.
And I agree. I think the defensive line group is fairly deep. I think it does go into the round 3 of this draft. I think if you want to get a corner that you want to start in week 1, and you need corners that can compete to start in week 1. I think that becomes a very high priority in the 2nd round of this draft for me.
Yeah. I'm hoping we still find a veteran to be able to fill that slot. But a guy like Lassiter, with the 2nd pick, the kid from Georgia, I'd be okay with that. I mean, because you're right, we got a hole there. But with that 2nd pick, maybe it's a safety. Maybe it's the kid from Minnesota. What is it, Newman from Minnesota? Yep. But there's a bunch of safeties who fall right in that. That's about the slot, 47 to 60. There's like 4 or 5 guys. If the coaches feel, I think we need another safety. But if the coaches feel like we need another safety, that's been there too. So I
would love Len to figure out a way to pick up an extra 3rd round pick somehow in this draft, because I think that could really help you fill one of those additional needs you're talking about.
Yeah, but we're not going to trade number 6 to get another 3rd round pick.
No. I was thinking it maybe move a pick in next year's draft, something like that. If you see a player you want to target, or maybe you slide back from 47 a bit, right?
Yeah.
And you turn that into a really late 2 and a late 3 or something. So then you move back 12 spots, but you pick up an extra late 3 or something like that, or early 4. Maybe that's something you can look into.
we gotta catch a break. Daniel's got to stay healthy. We got to get something more out of Daniel. Neal has got to come along at right tackle. Schmitz has got to take a step forward.
Well, you're listing all previous draft picks, which is what I've been saying for years. The 2024 draft class is not going to put on the cape and be Superman alone.
It's the 22 and 23 and 21 classes that need to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I mean, you look back 5 years at the draft, and I mean, some of these guys have got to emerge. No, I mean we got to get some stars on the field. Hey, listen, sorry I ended up a little negative at the end of the week.
Fine.
Yeah. I just I want it sooner than later, John, for a lot of reasons.
No, I get it, Len. Enjoy your weekend, Len. Yeah. Appreciate the call,
man. Okay, yeah, same to you. Go Yankees. Go Yankees.
Yeah, opening day today, baby. Excited for that. Let's go to
I was just going to say, real quickly, with respect to the offensive line, I mean, Neal and John Michael Schmitz are two linemen that you have to watch this season. It's not just about the new faces, because once again, you used high draft capital on them. And part of my concern, John, is, and we talk about this, when you change the play caller for the quarterback, you worry about another year of an adjustment. John Michael Schmitz now is going to be in his second season where he's going to have to play next to two completely new guards.
And have a new offensive line coach.
And a new offensive line coach, correct. So now it's almost as if you're resetting the clock, aren't you? Right, for John Michael Schmitz. I mean, granted, I know he played last season, but he did miss 4 games with a knee issue. So he still didn't have a full, complete season. And he wasn't on the field much with Daniel Jones, too. Let's not forget. Okay, because Daniel missed the 3 games before he suffered the torn ACL in Week 9 against the Raiders. They weren't on the field simultaneously together because John Michael Schmitz dealt with injury himself. I am not willing to just dismiss that and overlook that. You're going to have to hope that clicks with the 2 new guards next to him and whatever Carmen Brasillo is asking John Michael Schmitz to do, completely new voice. And a new quarterback, essentially. So that's the wild card. And, oh, by the way, he's the guy that touches the ball on every play in addition to the quarterback. Hey, look, slightly important.
The offensive line coach, once you get past the coordinators, to me, is the most important assistant coach on your roster. I thought Bobby Johnson was a good coach, but it didn't work out, obviously, and now they've brought in Carmen Brasillo, who's a Dante Scarnecchia disciple. You hope that he can help make those guys play better and be better players and develop them a little bit more. But we'll have to wait and see once these guys get on the field. We're not going to know this, guys. You're not going to want to hear this. We're not going to know this until you get into preseason games when you have real contact with pads on, fully padded practice.
And you may not know much from there too, John.
So it's no fun, but we're not going to know until the live guys start flying around in that first week of the season as to what you have with this group. You can see a little bit in camp. Again, maybe they'll have some joint practices where plays are live and you can get a feel for it. But offensive line, it's about what happens in games.
Without a doubt. I mean, real quick, a side note. Remember that first possession in the first preseason game, John? They marched down the field, and everybody said, watch out. This offense is going to average 30 points a game. What happened after that? It's not me trying to be a Debbie Downer. It's just the reality of the circumstance, right?
Which we did warn people about, by the way, just for the record.
Yeah, you can only take so much away even from preseason because the sample size is tiny and the defense that you're playing is not necessarily having all of their stars out there. So I'd back your timeline up a little bit more, and I would say you're going to need the first 3 regular season games, assuming everybody's healthy.
That's fair.
To acknowledge where they are, at least up front.
Of course, you can tune in to Big Blue Kickoff Live after the first OTA, and Paul Dottino will make many declarations for you about what's going to happen.
Yes, I'm sure. You can guarantee that as well.
I'm just teasing Paul. He doesn't do that. Let's go to Coach Marvin in Delaware. He's up next. Hey, Coach.
How you doing, John, Lance?
We're great.
Doing all right.
That's good. Lance, you got me standing up and applauding you today. I'm standing up.
Okay.
And I'm applauding. You did an excellent job talking about the draft, or how you would handle the draft, and I'm with you all the way on that. We're looking at that. I wouldn't mind having a quarterback, but you're right. You want your first person. When you start going to your second and third and fourth guy, you're reaching. So
yeah, but remember, Coach, I'm going to just jump in for a second. I don't care where the guy is ranked in your vertical stack. I care about what your grade is on the player. Because maybe it's a weird year where your top 3 guys all have legitimate top 5 grades. Now, is that common? No, but can it happen? Absolutely. I mean, we have three wide receivers. For example, like you use that logic for quarterback, but at the same time, would you be okay if the Giants picked their third best wide receiver in this draft at 6 because you really think all three are really good? So that's the point. It's a matter of where the Giants have these quarterbacks graded, not necessarily what number they are in their stack. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, and you're absolutely right. You're correct with that. But, the first thing I said is So, I mean, in my case,
I got you.
would be looking for my guy, not the guy that I think may be able to help me. You're right, and you're looking to see how all of them are going to fit certain ways. I mean, in my years of coaching, 12 years, I had 9 different quarterbacks in those 12 years. And that's on a youth level. And in high school, we had like 2 or 3 different ones. And they all was different styles. So we had game plans in my book. But I had to adjust those plays based on who was quarterbacking, call certain plays based on who was quarterbacking. So I kind of adjust my team to who was leading us as far as from the quarterback position. But on this level, I believe I would want my guy. And I do like Daniels and Williams. And if one of them crazily falls, and which is not, I don't think going to happen, then yeah, I would probably take them. I would take them, but I think I would sit at 6. But if one of them falls like that, maybe you have to go get them. The 3rd and 4th guy, I probably wouldn't move at all unless they fall to me. I wouldn't give away my picks because we don't have a lot to give right now. So that's why I probably.
Well, and remember, just real quickly, Coach Marvin, if you recall, and I know this is much deeper in the draft, but the year that the Patriots drafted Mac Jones, there was a lot of talk that maybe he'd even go to San Francisco. Jones fell. New England stayed pat. I think it was, the 15th overall pick or something?
Like that.
And they just grabbed him. Yeah, 15th. Okay, so it may have been one spot off. But New England didn't do anything. And there was talk about New England needs a quarterback. They stayed where they are. It fell to them. Now, granted, Mac had a great rookie year. Unfortunately, the environment around him drastically changed. Well documented.
Just look at Will Levis last year. They sat there and picked him at the top of the 2nd round.
Yeah, Tennessee. So it could happen.
Yeah, it could happen. And going back to those quarterbacks, you look at the first 3. Those franchises traded all 3 of their first-round picks of quarterback. I don't know about Howell was the first or not, but
Sam wasn't.
The second. But they traded those guys. They're all out of those teams. So now those teams are looking for a new face on the franchise. And to me, quarterback is your face of the franchise 99% of the time. So I think those franchises are going in different directions, and they're looking for a person to lead them there. And I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to draft quarterbacks. I believe those 3 are going to draft them. I think the Patriots will draft one. It's a chance they won't, but I'm saying again, I believe that they will. So that's the way I see it. As far as the team, Lynn said a lot of good things. I believe in what the team is doing. I'm not critical of our team that much. I support whatever they do. I'm not going to criticize them like crazy. Now, I'll critique some of the players to say something I don't agree with, but I'm not going to shoot them down and say they're horrible and all this stuff. But I think they did a good job with the offensive line. They're working. But since 2012, we've been working the offensive line. It just haven't worked out on the field. It isn't like they ignored the offensive line.
No, they've drafted guys. They've brought in free agents. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We brought in free agents, and so they're working. And I'm thinking they work. Now it looks like they're going from the inside out. And so like the 2nd rounder, really whatever. It's going to be a lot of guys there, I believe, that they can draft. But I like the kid out of Florida State, Fisk. I think it's first.
Braden Fisk.
That's a tackle. Yeah, I like him. Hopefully, someone like that will be there, and I think he'll be a good addition. The last thing I like to say, this is to John.
Yes.
It could be to you too, Lance, but John does a lot of that kind of scouting. A friend of mine from the Department of Justice called me about 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks ago. He asked me about a player, which is a friend of his. He's close to the family. And this player plays for South Carolina. I never called in, talked about it, because I don't know if the Giants were keeping it on the down low. And I just noticed the kid actually said something. So it's already been put out there that the Giants called him. and they the only ones that called him. And I looked at his film, and he looks pretty good.
What player? Who are you talking about?
I'm going to give you the name. It's Marcel Dial.
Okay. I have not watched him
He's
yet.
a cornerback. Take a look at him because they did call him.
Okay.
They did call him. The Giants called him. So I'd like you to take a look at him.
I will. I will put him on my. I'm going to focus on defense late next week. So I'll try to get. I'll put him into my safety list.
Yeah, 6 feet tall, 190 cornerback.
What's that, Lance?
No, I have his profile up. I just brought it up.
Oh,
6 feet tall, 190.
You listed a corner or safety?
Yeah.
He's listed as a corner.
ESPN has him listed as a safety. That's interesting.
But he's a corner. He played corner for South Carolina.
Okay.
When you see the films, you'll see he's at a corner. He's not at safety.
Got it.
I don't know if he can play safety, but he's close to my friend. I give him a name out because I know he's going to listen to the show. Nakia Grimes is the one who gave me the info. So shout out to him. But I'd like to, hopefully I'll hear from you. If I don't talk to you, you'll say something about it on the show that I'll be able to translate that back to him.
Yes, I will take a look at the player.
What you thought of him. Yeah. So he looked pretty good. I just thought he was a little touchy, but he looks pretty good. He's a little handsy. So,
and Coach, a lot of college cornerbacks are, man, because they let them get away with more stuff, and these guys can get very handsy in college. It's very true.
I think they taught that way a little bit, and that's true. A lot of them are handsy, and that's true.
Coach, appreciate the call, my friend.
Thank you. It was good talking to you.
Thank you. All right, let's go to Scott, New Mexico. He's up next. We got a flood of regulars on the lines today. Scott, what's going on?
Hey, guys. First of all, John, I want to compliment you on all the Giant huddles. I've watched pretty much all of them. And you learn a lot from listening to the guys about where they think things are going to go, like Stephen Ruiz, Joel Corey, Pat Kerwin, Randy Mueller. All of them have been great. One guy you haven't had on that I personally like is Dan Shanta from Our Lads. Is he scheduled?
No, Dan, and we haven't had Dan on in a few years. He unfortunately suffered a stroke 3 or 4 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And he's still good, but physically he's not really capable of giving interviews anymore with his speech. So unfortunately, we did have Dave Seviertson on, who's kind of taken over the scouting mantle at Our Lads. We had him on the huddle. Oh, boy, I think it was right after the Combine for a Combine review, if I recall, right, Pearson? Yeah, so he's kind of now the Our Lads, the face of it that's out there doing interviews for the Draft Guide.
Okay. I agree with a lot of the points that Coach Marvin made, but I think my concentration, the Giants are going to do whatever they do with the first-round draft pick. But it's the second-round draft pick that I'm interested in. And I think sometimes in our need to create more offense, which obviously Lance is a proponent of, and I agree, we sometimes think the defense isn't as important this year, and I think it is. And you just have to go back to the Super Bowl last year. Kansas City doesn't win that game unless that defense plays the way they did, and Kansas City played great defense the whole year. So I think there are two positions on the defense that I'm interested in specifically, and I wanted to get your take on which players you think. Two players, the one player I do agree with Coach Marvin is Braden Fisk, because you needed a three-technique tackle. And imagine having Dexter Lawrence and Fisk together. And if you saw what Fisk did the whole year and then what he did at the ACC game against Louisville, he was the most dominant player at the Senior Bowl. And, his measurables are great. So at the second-round pick, would somebody like that be available, do you think? Or will his notoriety now move him up the draft board? And because I think the defense is just as important as the offense this year. The second position I think they really have the need for is at cornerback. And the guy I like right now is Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama.
I don't think he's getting the 47, Scott.
Okay, I was just wondering if he would. But is there a way with the second-round pick the Giants could make a deal or something to move up for the second-round pick?
I wouldn't do that because you're then losing your third rounder, and there's so many holes to fill. Scott, I would not. Okay. I would not necessarily. I think you're looking to gain more picks at that point, not reduce them. At least in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially since once again, if you have areas across the board and you've already sacrificed some picks because of previous trades, how much more are you willing to give away? Especially since, I mean, you just listed. You're eyeing cornerback and you're eyeing interior defensive lineman.
Correct.
And I could give you a few other positions that you could argue the Giants could still address in the draft. It's the old story. You want at-bats. You're going to take away additional at-bats to address and help your roster. I don't see how that's worth it, especially also if you're not making a drastic move. I mean, they have the 47th overall pick in the second round. So the first pick in the second round is 33. I mean, they're not in terrible position.
Right in the middle.
Yeah, where you think if you stay put, you won't be able to get a player that could come in year one and contribute. I don't see why they have to be ultra aggressive unless they just love a guy and they have to have him. But I think Joe Schoen is going to weigh that against, if I have to sacrifice to get the one guy I love, who else am I losing out on? I don't think that's worth it.
So with the second-round pick, who do you envision at that spot? On defense, do you think they'll go defense first of all with that pick?
Well, you know,
they still want to bolster the offensive line with another offensive line.
It's about players, not positions, Scott. So it depends on players.
Yeah, I don't like getting caught up in, take a running back in the second round and a wide receiver in the third round because I don't know what their board looks like. But if they love a player and even on paper you think they have depth at that position, the roster's going to change next year. So if they really like a player and right now there's high volume, I would not get in the way of taking that player if that player is graded that much higher than who you would be reaching on for the sake of a need. The other thing to keep in mind, and let's focus on Fisk here right now, they have Jordan Riley and DJ Davidson on the roster. Now, I don't know what the new defensive staff thinks about both of those guys, but I thought Riley showed some flashes that I'd be willing to give him the opportunity to take on a bigger role next season. And I don't think that he's at the point where you've seen enough and you want to move on from him. So there are young options on the interior defensive line that they could still toy with. And if Shane Bowen likes what he sees, maybe the need to then go after a guy or make a move on a guy like Fisk is not as necessary at this stage.
Yeah, I think corner. I mean, I said it before. If there was if there is a player there that's worth the pick, because you're picking, again, players, not positions, I think that, to me, Lance, after a weapon on offense, corner would be my highest position of priority, at least for me.
Well, it's interesting. I want to go back to, for the recent Giants cover 4, if you remember.
Yep.
We ranked the top 6 needs of the Giants, and the 4 of us put it up there. So I'm just going to give you what I had. And I'll just look at you.
First, right?
You had wide receiver first.
Right, and then
you had cornerback 2.
That'll do it.
So I went.
And by the way, we all got murdered for not putting quarterback higher on our list. But guys, the question was need, and the Giants have 2 quarterbacks on the roster that can step in and start at quarterback. That's why, to me, even though you're always looking to upgrade the position, that wasn't necessarily a need. You know what I mean? Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, you got murdered? I mean, you're still alive and well. You look okay.
The comments on Twitter were proverbially murderous.
Well, I am untouched and unscathed.
Well,
I didn't get one comment.
Honestly,
so not that I'm losing sleep over it.
I didn't even look at him. I was told to like not look at him. So,
okay.
So
gotcha.
then I took a little bit of a glance, and I'm like, yeah, people weren't happy with us, but that's fine.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I went offensive game changer. I didn't even go wide receiver. Just give me an offensive weapon. So I stood behind the principles that I've been preaching. I went pass rusher 2, and then I went corner 3.
Even after the Burns edition,
Yeah, well, because here's my concern. Azeez Ojulari has yet to prove that he can get through a whole season, John. And he's in the final year of his rookie contract. So you know me, I'm a need beyond this year. So that's why, and Kayvon Thibodeau, who had a nice season one time. Remember, Leonard Williams had the double-digit sack season, and what did we hear? Oh, this is going to be the beginning of what's going to happen. What did Leonard Williams do? And this is not me taking a shot at Leonard Williams. It's just you can't assume when a guy does it once and doesn't have the track record that it follows suit every single year.
Only his second year. It's not like he's had an opportunity to develop.
No, 100%. But I want to protect myself.
I totally get it.
So that's why I have pass rusher 2 and then corners 3.
You can never have enough pass rushers.
Yeah. So the injury risk and the young, unproven commodities gave me the edge over pass rush. They're young at corner
now,
overall.
When you say pass rush, you mean edge, or could it be an interior pass rusher?
No, it could be an interior guy. Okay. I want sacks. I want to put pressure on the quarterback. If you think, John, you can achieve that from the interior, that's fine. I could live with that. Okay. I left it open-ended for that very reason, just like I did offensive game changer. And then I had cornerback number 3 because Deonte Banks, Cordell Flott, Trey Hawkins, young guys who you all drafted in the last 2 years. Nick McLeod is an interchangeable player. And right now, Nick McLeod, if you look at Giants' depth charts, McLeod could be penciled in as a starter.
That's who would be my starter if I had to play a game tomorrow.
And Aaron Robinson has not proven that he can be reliable and stay on the field. So that's what you're looking at, John, at that position. You're going to tell me there's not room to bring in a guy to compete and maybe feel good about lining up opposite Deonte Banks? There is absolutely room for that. But I'm not going to say you're in the second round, you have to take a corner, because it goes back to your point, John. Maybe the Giants don't have a high-graded corner when they get to the second round. And the pass rusher makes more sense. So you take the pass rusher instead of the corner, or you take the tight end instead of the corner. But from a need perspective, absolutely, corner is one of my top 3 needs entering the draft.
I want to send Lance off for have a great weekend with Charlie in Portland, Maine. Nothing sets up the weekend like a call from Charlie. Hi, Charlie.
You're giving him too much credit, though, that he'd actually even ruin my weekend, regardless of the phone call. Let's not put him that high on the pedestal.
Hey, John. Hey, Lance. Lance, I knew you were going to go on and on because you knew what my call was coming up.
No, so today I was not looking that carefully, in all honesty,
really?
of who was waiting for us down the pipeline.
All right.
So,
all right.
Yes.
But Lance is a master of the 4 corners offense at the end of these shows, if he has to be.
That's right. Yeah. I will second that. Yes.
Hey, look. I'll shout out to Len. The thing is, I don't know how much we've improved our offensive line. I think we've improved it. But remember, we gave up 85 sacks last year. So what are we going to give up? 45, 50 this year?
But remember, you're not just adding Illuminor and Runyon Jr. You're adding Andrew Thomas to that line too, who missed most of last year.
Well, he didn't miss most of last year.
He missed half of it.
Games. Well, yeah. Well, what do you think he's going to do this year with his
well, Charlie, I sure as hell hope he doesn't miss half the year, because if he does, the year's going to suck again. So I sure as hell hope that doesn't happen.
Listen, half of 17 is 8 to 9 in that ballpark. So he missed 7. So he missed about half the year.
And he played on one leg for another game, which is basically a virtual missed game. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Well, they better watch his hamstrings and not put him back out there when he was hurt, which is kind of dumb. But anyway, all I'm saying is the offensive line might have taken a little step forward, but is it really going to be enough? And the other thing, guys, you guys don't understand. You want a playmaker? You know who your playmaker is? It's your quarterback. And we don't have one.
Charlie,
need a quarterback.
We said if we think the quarterback sitting there that is a potential to be a special playmaking quarterback, we would take them. What else do you want?
That's what I'm saying.
So why are you arguing with us? That's what we said.
No, I'm not arguing about it, but Lance was saying, like, I'll take a playmaker at 6. Well, look, all of you guys didn't put the quarterbacks in there as a need, right? You just said it.
Yes, because you have players on the roster that can start you have players at the position that can start at the position, and you feel good about it.
And I also said that you can't assume that every quarterback is a playmaker automatically based on the current roster for this team, with some question marks that you yourself have mentioned are up front on
Charlie,
the offensive line.
The problem you're running into is that you said you have to add a quarterback, but you never say the name of the quarterback that you think is the guy that you want to add. No, because all I get reactions on Twitter. You have to draft a quarterback. You have to draft a quarterback.
No. I've mentioned there's 5 guys that can be picked in the top 10.
I think you're crazy.
6.
I think you're crazy.
No, I'm not.
Interchangeable?
You don't think Penix is a top quarterback? He's the most pro-ready
Michael
guy
Penix
there
has a
is.
second-round grade on my draft board.
Yeah, you're crazy. He's the most pro-ready quarterback of any of the 5.
That's great.
That guy
Charlie,
is going to ball out.
You put Michael Penix behind an offensive line that's not the best in college football like Washington and away from the 3 best receivers in college football, see what he looks like.
Going to look a lot better than Gomer Jones and company. I'll tell you that.
Do you know how many times Michael Penix would have been sacked if he played behind the Giants' offensive line last year? Around 200.
that was last year. You just said our offensive line is better.
But you yourself admitted that you don't like the offensive line and you're not sold on the offensive line. So
a quarterback can make an offensive line look a lot better than it is.
Yeah, but Michael Penix isn't a mover. He's the most stationary of the top 5 quarterbacks.
He's smart. He reads defenses. He knows how to get rid of the ball quickly. He's a smart quarterback. He processes. And we don't have a guy who can do that on this team right now.
So you think
Jones is not a processing quarterback.
If you want a guy that gets the ball out
seconds.
quickly, you should be talking about Bo Nix, not about Michael Penix.
Look, Michael Penix is going to be one of the best quarterbacks out of this draft, and it'll be proven in the next couple of years. And whoever passes on him are going to regret it. I'm telling you that. And if we just think we're going to get a wide receiver at 6, then he's going to be another Hyatt who's not going to get the ball, and they're not going to throw it to him because the quarterback can't, wake up enough to give him the ball, or the offensive line is not good enough and they can't run around. So to me, it's just going to be a track meet guy running around and not getting the ball, just like Hyatt.
Charlie,
is that what we're going to do again?
Charlie, the Carolina Panthers used the first overall pick on Bryce Young last season. How did that play out?
Yeah, well, how did Stroud play out?
Okay.
How did that guy play out?
But the point is,
you have to pick the right
guy. You're claiming that there's 5 guys that are worthy of taking, and you're under the assumption that all 5 are going to pan out. And I'm telling you that
when was the last time we picked a quarterback in the draft? It's been 6 years. You've got to go and take a swing. Jones is not the answer.
Charlie, again, we're fine picking a quarterback, but you just...
Well, who do you want? Okay, John,
have you not listened to any of my content the last 2 weeks, Charlie? Have you not listened to one sentence of our content?
Quarterback.
We had a conversation earlier on this show on quarterback.
Charlie, I did full Giant Huddle podcast on just the quarterback position. We've talked about, we had the guy on from LSU. We had the guy on from North Carolina. We had the guy on from Washington.
Who do you like?
I've said it a million times. Caleb Williams is my 1. Drake May is my 2. Jaden Daniels is my 3. A tier down from that is a middle first rounder is McCarthy. And then I have Penix and Nix as high second-round picks.
Well, they're not going to last the second round.
No, they probably won't because quarterbacks get overdrafted, and that's fine.
And we have yet to hear who you want.
I already said I want Penix.
Michael Penix. Yeah, but you said all 5 are worthy. So what's your order?
Well, they're not going to get there because the first 4 quarterbacks are going to be gone. McCarthy, Daniels, Williams, and May are all going to be gone. And so the guy that's going to be left at 6, in my opinion, is going to be Penix. And we're going to pass on him, and it's going to be another biggest mistake of our life when we passed on Herbert in 2020 at 4. The same thing.
Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate the call, my friend.
I give
him credit. He put the name on the guy, and he put himself out there with the guy in the name. That's all I was asking for. Good job. That's all I'm asking for. And he picked out the guy that was going to be there and the guy that he wants. Good for him. At least he picked out the guy, and that's good. And you know what? I just did an interview with Matt Waldman from Scouting RSP, who's awesome. That's going to be next week's huddle, and he has Penix as the second quarterback in the draft. People can disagree on this. A lot of people do love Penix. I don't like him as much as other people do, and to each their own. And
my concern is the injury history.
That too.
I'm probably more concerned about that than maybe him as a player. I think you're rolling the dice and you're holding that a guy's going to hold up, hoping that he's going to hold up when he hasn't proven to do that. So that concerns me, the injury baggage.
Yep. All right, well, we got to run. Guys, have a great weekend. For Lance Medow, I'm John Schmeelk. Giants.com/tickets for season tickets. Giants TV, our streaming app. Go check them out. Make sure you do it. Again, check out the Giants Huddle Podcast, Draft Season Podcast, and we'll be back on Monday with more Big Blue Kickoff Live at 12:30 as we continue our look around the country at Draft Pro Days. For Lance Medow, I'm John Schmeelk. We'll see you then.
Looking for a better solution to keep your firearms in high-performance condition? Visit RiptideArmory.com for the most advanced proprietary gun cleaning formula on the market. Right now, get up to $40 off any cleaning kit for a limited time on RiptideArmory.com and take advantage of this amazing deal today. Riptide's 2-step cleaning kit offers state-of-the-art technology and guaranteed satisfaction. Riptide Armory is a veteran-founded business, and you can trust that all chemicals are American-made and quality tested. Shop RiptideArmory.com.
Hey, it's Bobby Bones. Are you looking to build this year? If so, there is no better time than right now to start planning and to get your spot on the construction schedule. if you need a garage, a stall barn, a storage for vehicles, RV, boat, collectibles, or even a shop for your farm, hobbies, or car restoration projects, visit MortonBuildings.com and start your construction process. With superior materials, craftsmanship, best-in-class warranty, Morton Buildings are made to last for generations. At Morton, the difference is in the details. From their cutting-edge innovations to their craftsmen in the field, they are dedicated to surpassing expectations. Their legacy of excellence spans more than 120 years, and Morton Buildings is 100% employee-owned with more than 250,000 satisfied customers. That means they're the industry leader you can trust. When you choose Morton, you'll experience quality at every step of the building process, starting before the walls even go up. Visit MortonBuildings.com to get started today.